broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Welcome back, Masters of Sex fans, to another Masters of Sex AfterBuzz recap show. This is the penultimate episode of the season.
In the very brand new AfterBuzz studio.
I know. Look at this.
Penultimate episode happening in the studio.
Yeah, this
the
is
new
pretty
studio.
good. This is
Can we
pretty
have
good.
anything better?
Mate, we're going to find out.
Yes.
Over the next 45, 50 minutes, we will find out if we could get anything better.
All right.
Well, I'll tell you what's pretty great. Across from me, Adrian Snow.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
And next to her, Quinn Scillian.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
I, of course, am Will Link, if you didn't know that, but I figure by now you've been watching. This is, the penultimate episode of Season 3, Party of 4. Is the title of this. And we were talking a little bit before we started, Quinn, that this is kind of a bottle episode, you were saying.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not, it didn't take place fully in one space, but just a little bit like the boxing episode.
From last season. Yeah.
Kind of a bottle episode with a little bit, kind of peeks out into the outside world as well.
We had two bottles. We had the Libby bottle and then the Bill and Virginia bottle.
Yeah.
This actually might have been my favorite episode of the season.
Really?
I have a feeling you disagree with that.
I hated it.
Really?
Oh, I love it, and I'm in the middle.
You're in the
Absolutely despised
Okay, well now I just want to know right off the bat, what was it that you didn't like about it?
For me, it got to a point where I was like, I hate every character now.
You are not alone there. Actually, a lot of people are watching this season being like, is there anyone left to like? So I get that.
Well,
at first I was kind of like, I don't know. I feel empathy for Bill, and Virginia's getting on my nerves a little bit, but it's okay. But I still kind of like Dan, and that's good. But this episode, I was just like, no, I don't like anyone anymore.
I'll be honest with you. I completely agree with that statement. I still really like this episode because I think it brought out such strong emotions in me, particularly towards Bill, who, look, we've been talking about how Bill's kind of the worst, but this was really him laying the worst of him on line.
He needs so many mugs. #1 worst dad, #1 worst husband, #1 worst working associate.
Yeah.
He's the worst.
Worst person to have at a dinner party or after dinner.
Exactly.
Worst.
Well, the episode starts where Bill and Virginia are in New York, and they've just had a meeting about the big new book deal, the book, Human Sexual Inadequacy, which makes for a great toast, by the way. And we already see at the beginning they're not happy with each other, or Virginia's not happy with him.
As per usual.
He apparently didn't let her talk in the meeting, which is the exact polar opposite of what happened with Dan Logan in the meeting in Vegas.
Yeah.
So already we're setting up this great divide in the way these men do business with Virginia.
And he brought up the surrogacy program, which they had decided to discontinue.
Yes, it was supposed to put it on the back burner, but he brought it up. And you know what? I mean, I want to get into the details of this awkward dinner, but as to why Bill is basically like a douche here is because he had planned this whole thing. This was like a whole manipulated thing that he gets called out on by the end.
That is sociopathic behavior.
Yes.
Orchestrated everything to a T.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, if he is a sociopath, I wish he was more charming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he doesn't have that charm aspect.
Yeah, that's
got
the
that,
one
like,
good thing about sociopaths.
That Norman Bates aspect.
Nobody can have the charm of Norman Bates.
Norman.
So Bill shows up at the restaurant with Virginia. Virginia's like ready to get out of there. She doesn't even want to check her coat.
She's like, I would have been fine with a BLT from room service. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
On another show, this would have almost been some like wacky comedy of errors. She got his coat, and he's like, didn't make the reservation right and stuff.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
instead on this show,
the
it's
honeymooners or something.
yeah, but it's here it's like kind of ratcheted up for really awkward tension.
And the coat is just this point of contrition, this like power struggle between like,
Yes.
let him take your coat and like, I'm keeping the damn coat.
And he goes, and it was actually kind of a really bizarre moment where he's like, "Oh, master's reservation," and they're like, "There's a Mosher." He's like, "That's us." If you said it with over the phone, Mosher.
It's like
That was so weird.
It was
Oh.
so weird.
It's very much like a Ferris Bueller moment. It's like, I'm Abe Froman.
Yes.
But again.
But
not
also,
the
like,
charisma
as
of Ferris Bueller.
uncool as it gets is taking somebody else's reservation at a nice restaurant. Like, that's, like, the lamest of the lame.
I like
Do you know how many people don't? I used to be a host. Like, people don't show up. It's not a big deal.
Really?
I know, but obviously, like, even when they tried to give him a table, there was, like, only a tiny little two-top they could sit
Yeah.
at. So, like, obviously, this place is pretty hopping.
I like the Abe Froman.
Yes.
I'm Bill Masters, the sausage king of St. Louis.
Right?
Well, but yeah.
Yes, that's
but
true.
That kind of is. So, basically, not only this, though, he invited Dan Logan and Dan Logan's wife, Alice, played by Judy Greer, who is,
awesome.
yeah, she's always great.
Yeah.
And this was a great part for her because she got to show off both some of her great comedic and dramatic skills. Like, she's fantastic. I've been a fan of hers for a long time. And we've been talking so much about, will we meet Alice? Will we meet Dan Logan's wife? So I'm glad we finally did.
Yeah, me too. And things obviously weren't as agreed upon as Dan had led us to believe.
Well, there's one thing, because we're always kind of curious, like, what is the setup? And I think it's one thing to know that something's happening. It's another thing to see it. Like, you can agree to something, like, it's kind of like Goldie Hawn said about Kurt Russell. Like, as long as I don't really know, it doesn't really matter.
Out of sight, out of mind.
sight, out of mind.
And it's not flaunted in your face.
And also, we
Exactly.
weren't really sure if perhaps she also had a little something on the side. Seems
Yeah.
like that's not really the case.
Or maybe she was dying or something.
Yeah, or like, in a coma. We weren't really
We
sure.
were also, we were thinking all these possibilities with
We
her.
were trying to make Dan, I think, a sympathetic character. That's like, he's not just this guy. He's just going around screaming.
Because we were like, we really had like a little change, like maybe like a third way through the season where we all decided, like, wait, we like Dan. We like him. He's not the creep that we thought he was at the beginning. And so I think it was hard for us to like want to like renege on that so fast.
Well, let me ask you this: have we reneged on this? Is Dan a bad guy?
Oh, I don't think just because you sleep with other people and you're married makes you a bad
I think
person.
I think there's a gray area here for sure.
I think if there's open communication, you know, then that's something that's between two people. But the thing is that Bill, being a jerk, kind of broke their unspoken rule of, as long as I don't see it, I'm okay with it. And so for her to see it, I think. And then also for Dan to be honest,
she drank herself sick. Obviously, she was
an
like
alcoholic, but
not happy to be in this situation.
Yeah, we find out that the issue with Alice is she's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And Dan apparently has, over the years, I guess, well, he's clearly cheated on her a lot over the years, but it also sounds like he's tried to help her. There was this whole thing of where she realizes you want a partner, not a project, she says. And she's been a project. And it makes it sound like that maybe a lot of women that Dan has come across, he's tried to fix in some way. But he says Virginia's different.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, well, has he been telling every woman that she's different, or is she different? Or do we just think she's different because she's our lead?
Well, is she
says-
different, though?
Is she?
But
to him, is she different?
Yes, the conversation that he said when their marriage is coming to an end, and he tells Alice, "Well, I love her. I've never told you that before. So this is different. She is different."
But is Virginia still somebody in need of fixing in his mind? Maybe he says no because she's a strong woman.
I don't think in his mind she needs fixing. I think.
I mean,
he's not
here to rescue her from this horrible Bill Masters situation. It's somewhere in his head.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because
I truly think that Dan feels like a hero to her.
I think he sees her more as an equal and as a partner, which is something that he stresses even when she's not around, that he stresses to Bill, that he stresses to his wife. Like, if he just wants to be a hero, he wouldn't say that, you know, to multiple people that he doesn't have to say that to.
But you know what? I think that's the nuance of the show, though, is that he can see her as an equal while still feeling, you know, of the time that he's the man to come.
That's the nuance of the male-female dynamic. So I don't need you.
Art reflects life.
There you go.
Life
But I
reflects
do.
art.
No, yeah.
More to the comedy of errors aspect of this episode. First of all, there's a very odd scene in the bathroom with a matron who's like trying to.
How? This was so out of genre for the show. It was bizarre.
Well, at first I was like, what is this all about? And then I see, because it's that Alice is in the bathroom, she hears a thing about, the man Virginia's with has a thing, he doesn't want women wearing perfume. Occupational hazard. But it's still...
that was so stupid of her.
It was still a very... That was... As much as I loved this episode personally, that scene was a little awkwardly staged. Like, this woman's just spraying...
I've seen, I was like,
perfume.
there's a million other ways that this could have gone down, and they chose a really clunky way.
I think
for it
the
to
best
happen.
way that I've always seen in movies or television is when the two women end up in the bathroom together talking as friends.
Talking
That's
to each
exact.
other.
And then
Yeah.
one lets it slip, like, oh, so-and-so doesn't like me to wear fragrance. And then the other woman's just like,
Interesting.
And she would... That would have been
You're
enough.
like, girls are oddly, like, honest with the girls they meet in the bathroom. That's a thing.
Is that what's going on in
In
there?
line for the bathroom, in the bathroom.
because,
That's a
especially,
thing.
like, well, if it's a club, you're kind of drunk, so you're just like,
Like, oh my god, you're so nice. I'm never gonna see you ever again.
basically.
Strange men, we never talk to each other in the bathroom.
Well, you,
No.
like,
Yeah.
your situation's a little different. You're, like, partially naked in front of each other.
That's true. That's true. I always
not.
appreciate when I go in the bathroom. They have the divider between the urinals.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's a must.
Little courtesy.
This is to any restaurant or bar, anything. Invest in those dividers in
That's
your
a good
establishment.
thing. You know what I like is when the bathrooms have a shelf for your drink and a little hook for your purse. So do
Well,
that.
This bathroom had perfume. This bathroom had a lot of,
Yes.
and a woman,
Mouthwash.
and in this
Fancy.
look. Master of Sex this season, I don't think has been very subtle with some of its metaphors and ambush.
Yeah.
The perfume. It ambushes Virginia. Literally, Bill has ambushed her. Dan has been ambushed by Bill. It's not subtle.
I feel like the writer's just maybe a little tired. Are you okay? Guys doing okay?
And I've we've talked so much about this matron, but she's telling a whole story about like, oh yeah, no, the woman, she fell down and like she's got a black eye and it looks like her boyfriend beat her. Like we know
Her boyfriend did beat
You know
her.
what though?
Like, come on.
Props to the girl who booked that part though, because actually I thought she did a really good job with a role that could have been really hard. So
Yeah.
I wanted to give her a little bit of credit there.
No, it was
Yeah,
pretty
no,
good.
it's true.
She
It's true
played
for-
pretty genuine,
Yeah, really genuinely, yeah.
we're talking about her enough.
right?
So then another little comedy of error moment. They get to the table and it's the tiniest table. Dan comes in and it's already this kind of, for lack of a better word, it's already this kind of big dick contest between these two guys. And Dan's like, I've got the pull to get us a table here. And then Bill's like, oh, look, it's a small table. Like, it's like, then it's a tiny table. Like,
And then
it's
he
over-
goes, "We'll have your finest champagne." That was Bill upping the ante.
Yes.
But Bill, he's such a jerk because I feel like he could tell that Alice, just by their hesitancy about her ordering the glass of wine, that he could tell that, she's an alcoholic.
Yeah, and I feel like in his mind, he's like, well, that's Dan Logan's problem. And he even though calls Dan Logan out in the scene at the end where where Dan kind of blames Bill for this, and Bill's like, well, you've got some responsibility in this too. And Dan can't say no to that. Dan
He
goes,
can't, but Bill, that
No.
was a low move.
Bill's more in the wrong if there's such a but Dan, I mean, he's he shouldn't be having an affair. He shouldn't be married if this is the thing then.
I mean,
If he's going to be upset,
think it was
if he's going to be
always-
upset the way she reacts.
But then again, like that's kind of also just like a sign of the times. I don't think it was always a bad marriage. I think I'm not excusing his actions after having to deal with his wife being an alcoholic, but things change in a marriage over time, and feelings move in different different ways and everything. And he, at that time in the 60s and 50s, you did not get divorced.
No, that's true.
If somebody wanted to step out, they stepped out. That was it.
but I think that we're dealing with people who are like more progressive thinkers for their time, so we hold them to just like a little bit higher of a standard where
Yeah.
that's concerned.
And also Alice is wonderfully passive aggressive in this whole scene.
Oh my gosh.
just
And that's
how
where
she-
Judy Greer really
Yes, she nailed it.
nailed it. Yeah, she does, man. This like slight little like this dig that's almost not even there unless you.
And then just dropping all these things about, oh yeah, and there was that Japanese scientist that you worked with her
Oh, yeah.
in Dallas and Seattle, and then, she comes out as if like she talks about Dan not bringing her around because, well, if he doesn't wear a ring, he could use his charm and attract him, almost in this way of like, oh, I know he does this, but short of saying I know he sleeps with people.
But he does wear his wedding ring. Like that's the one thing I was like, writers, if you're gonna put him in the ring for 10 episodes, don't make that her line. Just be like, he doesn't bring the wife around, because then it's like, you know, he could be a widower or something like that. That was kind of one thing that I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
Because actually the point she makes is good, but they made that not work.
And the other thing Bill does is he uses this as an opportunity to, we're going to end our like relationship with Dan Logan, basically.
So crazy.
We don't need the money anymore. We got the new book deal, probably.
And also just as smug as ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a table of mind games and passive aggression. Like that's all that table was filled with.
And that was another thing that hit both Dan and Virginia. For a moment, you felt like, just for a fraction of a second, there was like this kind of like thing between Bill and Alice. Like they're both like, cheer. Like they're both into it because they know they're driving these two
apart,
insane and apart. Now let me ask you this though: is there a reason though to keep? You know, they're working with a lotion thing, but is Bill? If it wasn't for the fact that Bill is doing this for the wrong reasons, is Bill right in? Yeah, there's no need for this to go on.
He's totally justified. He didn't have to do it at a dinner with the man's wife and all that kind of stuff. But there isn't really a use for Dan anymore. That's
even like
right.
I think it was 2 episodes ago, you know, Virginia was scrambling to find, you
Something
know,
to do.
more research for them to do and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think that like he's overstayed his welcome for sure.
I think a really interesting thing that happened with the later scenes with Alice and Virginia, and then with Dan and Bill, is how they both those characters of Alice and Bill know the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of the other two so much that they were able to like just plant these insecurities into them of just like when Alice says to her, he's going to come to you and say that he wants to spend the rest of his life with you, and he's going to probably at that time believe it. And I was like, dang, that's cold. But that's exactly what Dan goes and does, and it plants this insecurity in Virginia of like, oh, I don't know if that's what I want. And then Bill does the same thing where it's like, Virginia will never choose you over the work. The work is what will always keep her.
And he talks about Ethan, who she
I was like really happy that we brought that up, because I do think that that's like a little bit of a black spot for Virginia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Something that she looks back on and probably really, really feels bad about.
Yeah, certainly she did not handle that well.
Yeah.
But the other thing that Alice talks about when it's just her and Dan, because then these parties kind of, you know, Virginia gets up and runs off.
Everyone's
and Bill
gone. And in the whole restaurant, people keep being like, can I please feed you?
Right?
Yeah.
That was actually really nice, though,
I
for
know.
how they treated them prior. I was like,
know.
yeah.
That's true. But Alice basically talks like, and this again makes me have a lot more questions about what was going on in the marriage, because she's like, well, it was never a choice for me.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's
But that's
like
something that Dan said earlier about, well, them not having children was never a choice for him. So I don't,
that's, I mean, look, there's clearly complex things in this marriage that we're not going to end up getting to. But I wondered if, with her drinking, if it's like a chicken or the egg kind of thing. Does she drink because he's cheating? Or is
he cheating because she's drinking?
Yeah. Like, I'm not necessarily completely sure. I mean, either way, she has a drinking problem.
Yeah.
She can't do this in moderation.
Yeah.
But what is the impetus to that? Does she... Like, she wouldn't have been drunk that night if it wasn't for his cheating, you know? So it's kind of like...
Did they make mention of when the cheating started?
No.
Oh, well, shoot.
But I feel like it's been going on for a while.
But they did mention that at one point they did have a good marriage. Like that was something that was mildly referenced. So it's hard to say. I don't know.
Now, in that scene, you're right, that when they they kind of all run off to separate things. Bill and Virginia end up in the
Coat check.
This
Coat
is the
check
conversation that I really wanted to talk about.
Okay. Well,
Just that he was basically like, you're your mother's daughter. You know what I mean? You think that you don't need a man, but deep down you do need one in your life. You want that stability, that home life and everything like that. And I don't know. What did you guys think about that?
well, Bill wants that to be Bill is, because he says that, but he's not gonna give her a home life. You know what I mean? He wants to link it all to the work.
No, we made mention of marriage. Remember he was talking about his kind of he was talking about I asked her to marry me when I put her name on the book and everything like that.
Well,
yeah.
But he was saying in terms of offering her the partnership of
Yeah.
making her a business.
So it's Bill says that, but he can only really somewhat deliver on that
Yeah.
if this is about him.
Well, I think why he said that about your mother was to kind of use that as a way to get her to push away from Dan. He was like, this is something that you do. You don't even realize you're doing it. It's something that you learned from your mother. But when we were talking in the hospital right before you had the baby, I was pushing for you to pursue your passion, your job. That's what you should be pursuing. That's what you want to do. Don't fall into the trap. Is what it sounded like to me.
It's
of
interesting.
what your mother wants.
I actually feel like anytime Virginia feels like she's being compared to mom, that has been pushing her closer to Dan over the season.
Yeah, because in a lot of, you know what? I think it was, remember earlier on, the mother was trying to push her towards Bill.
And that pushed her towards Dan.
That pushed her towards Dan.
Yeah.
And Bill didn't really help his own situation. The other great thing is he gives that really great speech at the end about, and I mean, it's just great how Michael Sheen delivers it and everything, about my marriage to her was when I put her name in that book, and I did that. And
I know. I just thought that was I just think that's really interesting word usage. I know that what he really means is the partnership, but this is the first mention we've ever heard of a quote unquote marriage between.
I think
Bill and
I think he
Virginia.
refers to it then as an intellectual, a marriage of intellect.
I know, but we're still using the word marriage when we know what's going to happen a couple of years down the line.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's true. We have the foresight of knowing what happens to these characters.
So I just heard that, and I heard a little bit a ding ding ding.
Which, by the way, they have come so far apart this season.
Oh yeah, I know.
That it's almost impossible to
Only in
me
the
to
span
see.
of 4 episodes.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess it's only been 4 episodes.
Or 5
I feel like they've been. I mean, I feel like
from jump.
as viewers, we feel like if Virginia and Bill aren't sleeping together, then they're not on the same page with anything. I think that's kind of how I feel about it.
No, I definitely get that, because that's our best barometer of these two are in a relationship together.
Yeah, and that they're kind of together going towards
they're-
the same goal.
Yeah, and they will eventually be married in real life. I look at this couple, and I cannot find a path that Bill can use to win her back at this point. Although I know he does, because I know what happens.
I think he's actually already done it.
But I mean, that's so horrible.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I think it's healthy, but I think that what he said to her in the coat check of planting that seed of doubt, comparing her to her mother, which is a surefire way to get a woman to reverse course, it is putting her back on the track to Bill. Because that way she hesitates when Dan is there with the suitcase.
That's what I'm
Even though
saying.
Alice has planted that seed of he's gonna think he wants it and he doesn't, Bill's also planted that seed of this is not what you want. What you really want is to be in the office with me doing the work.
Well, you know what's so funny? This isn't a show that I think of often in terms of happy endings, sad endings. The show.
Yeah.
In the back of my head, I'm like, well, eventually they'll be together, so they'll be happy. But I guess this show could end on a note whenever it does end, whether it's next season or the season after that. A sad note of and now these two are in this really messed up relationship, and they will be miserable.
But I think
That's
our happiness
true
hinges
life.
more on less on Bill and Virginia than it does on the people they've affected in their lives and how their lives turn out. That's how I feel about.
Okay, that's true. I also love though when Bill comes back to that table. I love when Dan calls him, "You're a son of a bitch." I love the delivery that Josh Charles. I almost said Josh Logan. Josh Charles used in that. I thought that was another great scene. But then, you're saying Bill already won her back, and then Dan.
I'm saying he's already put her on track.
On track to win her. But yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Sorry. But Dan does bring up a good point. Like, it's been 10 years here since you put her name on that book. Oh. So then, yeah, exactly. He said it's been 10 years since you put her name on that book.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, are we just gonna pass over that? What on earth was that?
I think. Did you say something scandalous? I couldn't tell. Was it
Did
scandalous?
I?
Did he?
Did he?
I pressed it on accident.
It's okay. We wanted to hear it again. That's all.
That's okay.
All good.
So Dan.
Some Jerry Springer.
Right?
What was I saying? Oh yeah, no. Does Dan? Dan says you should have said something. You should have said your feelings. And then there's this really pathetic moment where Bill is called back to St. Louis, and he's clearly about to say something, and Virginia's like, this isn't the time or the place.
I know.
And Bill,
she's right about that.
She's right about
Certainly wasn't.
Yeah.
I was like, Bill got saved by the bell for sure.
About to get punched in the face.
I know.
So she goes back to her.
Probably.
He goes back to St. Louis for reasons we'll get into in a minute or two here. But Dan then shows up at her hotel room and says, like, I left my wife.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, even though he's saying, I'm here for you, there was something so final about that scene for them,
Yeah.
Really felt over. I don't know. We'll have
I
to
bet
see.
you they're just going to skip it, like the little punks they are. And next episode, it's going to be like, Dan went back to New York.
He's,
blah, 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 blah.
He's gone. I don't know.
Well, Dan, I guess, is... I mean, look, I'm assuming whatever's going to happen between the two of them is going to get wrapped up in the next episode. Because I'm assuming... And I don't know why I'm assuming this, but I'm assuming Josh Charles doesn't come back for season 4.
That's what I'm saying. I just don't think we're gonna see as simple as that. I think the actor won't be back, so that's how we know it's gonna happen.
I actually have a prediction for how that's going to go down, which isn't much of a prediction, so I'll save that for a little bit.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah. I'll save that for a little bit.
Do you guys want to jump into
get into the
Libby
storyline, because the Libby storyline went in some places I did not see coming.
I far more enjoyed watching the Libby storyline than the dinner storyline. Dinner storyline was a little bit strenuous, whereas this I was so happy to get to have this much screen time with Johnny. I think I've been craving it a lot, and so to finally really get to meet this kid, I swear, for the first time, it was like it was a little bit of a palate cleanser.
He's
for
such
me.
a great actor.
He really is.
That little kid was great,
and he got a great look for the show. Everything.
This episode gave him a lot to shine.
Yeah.
And so the Libby stuff, which is cross-cut through the dinner stuff the whole time, it's like this domestic bliss.
Right.
It's like this, it's her and Paul, and they're doing dishes, and he's changing light bulbs, and he's killing bugs.
He's calling her Lib around the kids.
Yeah.
Like, changing the plumbing
and she's like, oh.
I'm like, yes, you fucking fix that sink.
And he's
fix it.
Maybe like, oh, you're calling me Lib past the mashed potatoes, Lib. Like she's saying,
yeah.
And the kids clearly love him. He was great with Johnny there. He's like goofing around with the kids. And I love the little speech he gives to Johnny. And in that moment, it's like, oh, I want him to be Johnny's new father.
Yeah.
Because he gave more of a life lesson in just his speech about fear and the thing that Johnny is he's like, the thing I'm afraid of is that people know I'm actually afraid of things. And like in talking about that, it was the most fatherly moment we've had, and it wasn't even
ever
from
on
his
the show,
father.
probably.
Yeah. So I just thought that was so wonderful.
And
I thought it was
make this stupid storyline that I hate, and that I want to like hit over the head with a shovel and then bury in my backyard.
Oh. So
I hate this storyline.
So you've got some strong feelings.
I have some strong feelings.
We're talking about Bill?
Officer and
about the officer.
Well, let's get this. Let's paint the picture. So Libby is there trying to figure out like what the best way to leave Bill, and it's like because I've been yelling about this whole season. I'm like, I want by the end of the season.
We heard the D word.
Yes.
Divorce.
She is going to leave him. She is preparing. Libby is finally strong, and she's got someone to support her.
I wish that she just do it on her own. I wish she wasn't leaving him just to be with another man. But that's, my thing. I think she still needs alone time. But yeah.
Okay, that's true.
I think we're asking a lot of a show from the 1960s. I truly think that.
I would also still argue that she's been alone.
Yeah. I would know. I think that's pretty valid. Yeah. You know what I mean? She's been like dealing
alone
with some
for decades.
just like mentally dealing with this inner turmoil.
Yeah. And she's got this great thing of like talking about like, I don't think Bill's going to yell when I tell him, but my biggest fear is what if he doesn't care?
I thought that before she even said that line. I was thinking that. I was
gonna have
like,
a sigh of relief.
Because she's like, because we're like, how is this going to go down? How's this going to go down? And I was just like, oh my God, I could see it being like Bill just being like, yeah, okay. Like that's literally how I could see that conversation happening.
Yeah, like he just understands the practicality of what's just happened. But then your favorite storyline starts up.
And
Back to Dennis.
Can I say this actor who played the officer, whose name I forget, he was in an extant. I want to slap him in an extant. I want to slap him
Extant,
now.
the Halle Berry show.
Yes.
Not a fan.
Yeah, I did the
So sorry.
You used to do the show for that.
We did season 1. We did not come back for season 2.
Oh, so there's a reason.
Yeah.
And it's this guy.
He's one of many reasons.
So, well, okay, so there's a knock on the door. It's an officer. And he starts asking questions. And I'm like, where's this going?
Really?
And,
you didn't know where it was going right away?
Well, not right away.
Gosh,
not right away. When the questioning started. Not when he first came in.
I thought it was going to be about the Bible thumpers and the little redhead or something.
Oh, I thought right away it was going to be about this Dennis
Okay,
thing.
and then I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of like getting, and maybe this is why I don't hate it as much as you, just because it took me by surprise, but that's not always a good reason to like something. But I was like, wait a second, are they thinking Bill's a sexual predator or child molester? Because he showed Dennis the medical pictures. Medical drawing. So they're like, oh, do you show him pictures of a naked man or something? Like, what?
And that's why for me, I was like, this is ridiculous. Because one, in the 60s, at that time, I'm not saying that like I in any way thought that they were more condoning of child predators.
I get what you're going to say, though. Yeah.
They didn't like... When I was a kid in the 90s, I could run around in the streets till like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Like, nobody cared as
Yeah.
long as I was in the neighborhood. So you expect me to believe that this woman, like these kids are heard on the playground, and then it's told to this guy's mom, to this kid's mom, that a cop would take time to do all this? Like, it doesn't make any sense for the time that we're in.
No, well,
but I think in on the other side of that is that Bill's line of work already puts him on.
He's already a target.
Yeah, he's already a target for what he does.
And here's the thing: I wonder if it's less. I mean, I got to see how this all plays out, because part of me wonders, is it less that he showed some medical pictures of a penis, and more the fact that
nobody knows that that's what happened. Even Johnny during the entire interrogation never said, oh, Dennis asked my dad a question and my dad showed him a medical book. Like, that was never explained.
Yeah.
All we kept talking about is how Johnny said my dad needed to show him how his penis worked.
Yeah.
Like, how else is that going to sound? We never ever talked about a medical book or about, the wet dreams or anything like that.
I wonder though also, is it even just the mere fact that a parent in the 60s might not even want, like, how dare this man start talking about penises to my child, more than even what, more than even the image.
The pedophilia.
Or the idea of pedophilia.
Yeah.
I just think it's really odd, one, for a police officer to arrive at someone's house at like 10:30 at night and to completely disregard the adult and only want to speak to the child, and not in any sense try to make it so I need to speak to your son separately and I need to speak to Bill separately, and I will come back when I can do such a thing.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that?
And also just
that's
like,
not professional.
Oh, and he never said anything along the lines of like, now Johnny, tell me exactly what you saw your dad doing with, you know what I mean? Like, because that
he was just baiting.
It was, he was just baiting. It was kind of, it was frustrating.
And now poor Johnny's got even more of a complex about this, because he's like, oh, is he gonna, like, my father's going to hate me more.
Yeah.
But
that led to one of my favorite moments of the season.
That's true.
The conversation between Libby and Johnny was like so sweet.
Yeah. And it was a great moment about this is what your
Yeah.
father's father did to him, and this was their relationship, and then it led to this really sad thing. It's like Johnny's like, well, I thought me and my dad would get better. Like they never got better. Can me and my dad get better?
You know what I think about this conversation that I'm kind of realizing is, Libby is explaining all of this to Johnny, and I think that she was reminding herself of it all too, because that. Compared with the fact that she can't leave Bill because of the scandal now, maybe that led to her wanting to stay with him too. Just like a little bit more sympathy that she had forgotten. Maybe.
Well, she does have sympathy with Bill because she knows her husband isn't a sex offender or a child molester. She knows this about that. Whatever he was doing.
But I'm saying that maybe Libby needed to remind herself that one of the reasons why Bill is so hard to connect with is because
the way he was raised,
and something that he doesn't have any control over. So I think maybe she needed to, that also had to do with her kind of having to make this hard decision to not leave.
She should have left.
Well, the first.
She should have left. Ugh, so frustrating.
The second I saw this going down, I wrote my notes like, will this delay the divorce, ? And then literally the next scene it was like,
I can't leave
him.
Ugh.
I mean, so what is this?
Libby.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, the last thing that's said, the last moment is Paul asks, is this for now or is this for forever?
And
because
it cuts to black. Yeah.
Exactly. Because look, I honestly, if Libby says it's for now and she wants to see Bill through this, I get that. And I actually think that's commendable in a lot of ways because, like she said, I don't want my children to perceive him as he's a monster.
Yeah.
Also, the public opinion would be like, oh, now look, his wife left him.
Yeah.
Like,
But also, then for us, at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel there.
Yeah.
but we don't know the answer to that question, now or forever.
Probably
So-
forever, just
yeah.
judging by her face. But I think Bill's still gonna, even though she's gonna stay for Johnny and to save his reputation, it's gonna be that much of a harder slap in the face when he leaves her for Virginia.
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, now begs the question: which master leaves which master?
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm starting to think that my season-long prediction of Libby leaving Bill, which I was tasting at the beginning of this episode, I'm like, it's gonna happen, and now I'm like, it's not gonna happen.
I know.
It's
got
gonna
ripped away from you.
So quick.
this season. Their relationship is probably gonna be left in some sort of ambiguity. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
then probably
We're gonna get a nice little
so-
cliffhanger next
I
week.
I just hope that. I was talking about happy endings and will this show have a happy ending and what would a happy ending for the show even look like?
Yeah.
But I just hope that Libby, at the end of the day, ends up happy. I kind of want real happiness for her because I feel like she is the one.
has the most potential.
Yes, she is the one who is closest to achieving happiness of this threesome.
And I also feel that way. I mean, she is kind of she's in the trio, but also coming off of that, I think we all really want to see good things for Virginia's kids and for Johnny and stuff like that.
And like you said, a lot of the supporting people.
Yeah, I care much more about how they turn out at this point.
Betty and
Yeah, Betty and Helen. They're kind of like, if their endings are happy, then my ending is happy.
And I'm worried we're not going to get much more of them this season, if
Yeah,
at
I
all.
doubt
I think
we're
we're just
gonna
going to get her around the office next episode. Yeah. Now the one last thing, I guess, before we get to some predictions and stuff like that. Paul kind of is talking about these accusations, like maybe it's true. Do you think Paul thinks that these things could be true?
I think he has a very low opinion of Bill because he knows of the decade-long affair and other stuff, and so I think he doesn't. I don't know if he necessarily thinks that Bill would do that. I just know that he thinks Bill is neglectful and not a very good person and selfish. So he's not going to root for him.
I was gonna say I could see Paul keeping quiet almost to make things kind of go in his direction. You mean not lend his support to Bill, but also not.
Yeah, well, I guess
not publicly, shame him either.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, I get. Look, there's he was. They might ask him because he was the co-coach on the football team, and maybe that's where Paul comes into play in all this. At some point, maybe at some point he's questioning about Bill with the kids on the team, which Dennis was. Wasn't Dennis the quarterback of the team? So they go. All I'm saying is Libby. Leave Bill. Do it in the next episode. So I was right about my predictions for the whole season. But let's get to predictions for next episode.
Sure.
You look for the
See,
lights.
I was gonna say, that was a sound I was expecting. That one I knew was coming.
And the light's good. I'm glad. New studio, but the same.
Yeah,
The same.
You know what? Feels like home.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. So, Adrian, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think Henry's dead.
Oh.
And I think that's going to be the cliffhanger thing, is that she finds out her son is dead. That kind of is like the thing that also will push her probably closer to Bill, like wanting to work instead of
It's funny
dealing
because
with that.
just bums me out because it's like we've seen Virginia so mopey all season. I'm like, one more thing, her son dying. Ugh.
So
And, you know, that in the very first episode, you and me had talked about that. Like, oh, is this son going to be a way for them to kind of talk about Vietnam in the show and stuff? And they didn't. They touched upon it. I remember one episode when she was getting but they really never did. And I wouldn't be shocked if that happens in the finale.
yeah, I think they're going to completely ignore Tessa. I think
That's a shame.
Libby's going to stay. Paul's going to move away. Dan's going to go back to his wife. And Bill is going to, I don't know why, they might take him to trial.
But nothing like that ever happened, obviously.
No, but Virginia didn't have
Come
all his
on,
kids either.
all characters are fictionalized, and
it makes me wonder if they this show, maybe they'll never get together. Maybe this is the alternate. Maybe this is like Tarantino with Inglourious Bastards, where they're killing it. This is just gonna nothing's actually ever gonna happen.
Maybe
you never know. The series ends with Bill in jail.
They could do some crazy like Weeds type ending where you're like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, you never know.
And he's been a pervert all along.
Yeah. The whole time he was a child molester.
Yeah.
Quinn?
Let me think. I think we might see Tessa next episode. I think we're definitely gonna see I just had a good one.
Did it involve child molestation?
Yeah, it did involve child molestation. I think we are going to see a fight.
Okay. Well, look.
Between Libby and Bill. We'll see.
All right.
I don't know.
Maybe the whole thing of like she's standing by him in this mess, and like because here's the thing, she'll stand by him. This is the one reason why she should just walk out on him. Consequences be damned, because he's never going to appreciate her standing by him to begin with. It's just expected.
It's just expected of her. I could actually see us a little hint of Bill and Virginia kind of coming back together next episode too.
Well, because she'll have his back.
Yeah.
Because no matter what Bill has done, this kind of outweighs things. Look, they're still colleagues and they're still friends and they still have feelings for each other. And, in a time of need, you're not going to abandon people you actually care about, even if you've been in a big fight and stuff like that.
But I'm saying I could see them having like maybe a romantic rekindling next week. We'll see. I don't know.
It's possible.
I have not given one good freaking prediction this entire season, so why start now?
Oh, that's not true.
Well, I think, first of all, because these characters tend to repeat their bad behavior so much, I think Virginia is going to do just as Bill said, she's going to pull the same crap with Dan that she pulled with Ethan. I think somehow it's going to play out in a similar way where Dan's like ready to go, and I just bought a new place in St. Louis, and she's like, I'm not moving there, and I'm not being with you, and I just can't do this. Sorry, go back to New York. Like, I feel like she's going to do a similar thing, which is going to make her, because everybody's terrible on this. I like the show. It's just everybody's acting terrible.
When it gets to be a point where everyone's terrible on the show, like that's what happened with Weeds. It's kind of what happened with Orange Is the New Black. Not completely, but
I think so.
With Orange Is the New Black, you think
I hated the last season.
Well, it's on its, especially at least with the lead. If they killed her tomorrow, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be like, okay, bye.
I mean,
we can talk about Orange is the New Black.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
But that's the kind of thing. It's like when it gets to that point where it's just like, oh, nothing that anyone's doing is redeemable. I can't sustain my care for this. I don't care anymore.
Well, let me say, just one Orange is the New Black. You're absolutely right. The worst character on Orange is the New Black is Piper.
Yes.
Not to get into anything more about the show, but she's the worst character.
No,
on
I think
that
Ruby
show.
Rose was the worst. She was horrible.
My other prediction here has to do with these charges, and maybe one of that. I think the religious fanatics are behind this. I think they're
that's
pushing
one thing
it.
I wanted to say about the religious people, that we were gonna see them.
I
We
think,
will
yeah.
see them because like
We'll
they've
see
been
them.
they've been
They'll
like
make an
you know.
appearance.
Yeah, and by the way, the previous episode ended where we saw, I'm blanking on her character's name, Emily King's character, Beth from The Walking Dead. Why am I blanking
We're just
on her
gonna
name?
call her Beth.
Beth from The Walking Dead. I'm
Nora.
so sad. Nora. When Nora, we see that she's working with that guy that we saw at the
I
end of the
forgot
previous
about that.
episode.
Oh my gosh.
So that has to come into play in some way.
So that guy may not even be a cop. That would totally make sense.
But why he was such a bad
why
cop.
he was a bad cop.
Yeah, he wasn't a real cop.
Nah, I think he was a cop.
That's a good prediction.
I think he was a cop.
No, but them, the religious people setting him up to go in there, like that's.
But I think either way, I think the religious people are all about this Fuhrer. I think somehow, I have no idea how, but I smell the religious people behind this.
We'll see.
He might not be a real cop. Just saying.
Well, let me tell you what. I think he's a real cop, but I want you to be right because I think that would be crazy and I'd love it.
You know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing we need to stay tuned.
Exactly.
Stay tuned.
So, yes. Adrian, why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Miss Adrian Snow. That's MSEDRINSNOW.
Hi there. You can find me on Instagram at Quinstagram. You can find me on Twitter at Quinn Scillian, and you can search for me on Vine at the Quinn Bee.
And you can follow me on Twitter at The Real Will Link. You can also listen to my pop culture comedy podcast, Will Sean Podcast. It's hilarious and informative. You'll like it. Give it a listen to. We will see you here next week for the season finale. We'll see you Sunday, not even a full week. We'll see you Sunday for the season finale.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.